Hey, get to the root of trauma. Sponsored by Parent Enhancement Program. I want to say thank you to all our followers out there, all over the world that listen to us podcast. Not only are we different from other podcasters in ways of we are vulnerable, we tell our story, we share our story. It's getting to that messy middle that no one wants to talk about, no one wants to share, no one wants to know. But if we do not get it out, it's like a volcano that will eventually explode and leak all over our little ones. Now, who wants that to happen? We have guest speakers also share their experiences and different techniques that they can help you get to the root of trauma. Again, like, share, follow, and we will help you work it out. Hello to my followers. Welcome back. This is Jules and Carolina with Get to the Root of Trauma. Now, you know that's that messy middle that no one wants to share. Everyone wants to push to the back. But if you ever want to talk about it, you can always talk to me or Carolina on www.parentenhancement.program.com/contact. So that is why I'm here today. We have a doctor. Can you believe it? We have Dr. Gila to talk about why we snap. Haha, now that is something special. Why do we snap? So I'm going to give it to her and I'm going to let her talk to you about this specific topic. Please take it away. Why do we snap?
All right. Thank you so much, Jules. I'm so excited to be here. I'm excited about this beautiful new resource you've started, and I'm honored to be a part of it. So thank you. I am Dr. Gila. I know it's hard to pronounce, so here's a tip. It rhymes with tequila. I'm a single mom. I'm a psychologist and a neuropsychologist, and I'm a JAI certified parent coach. And I have a coaching business called Connection-Based Parenting, where I help parents develop the confidence and skills to handle these hard parenting moments. We all have them. And I help them build strong, healthy relationships with their kids and, importantly, with themselves. And as a single mom, I have a special interest in supporting other single parents. So today I'm talking about why we, and I say we because I do it too, why we lose it sometimes with our kids. It might look different for different people. You might snap, you might yell, you might do other things you regret later. For some people, it looks like shutting down and withdrawing. So why does this happen? Why do we do this? And I want to share with you a little story. So when my son was around 3 years old, we took a trip to Florida to visit my then 94-year-old grandmother. And we were with my parents. So it was 4 generations, meaning 4 generations of love and also 4 generations of history and complicated dynamics. I'm sure you can relate.
Yes.
And I have to say, my grandmother, she unfortunately died a few years ago, but she was this incredible force of a woman. She was a Holocaust survivor, and that affected her in all kinds of different ways. But she lived life to the fullest. This woman, I'm telling you, at 96 years old, had a more active social life than I do. And she also spoke her mind, even if that was hard for other people to hear. She was cognitively with it more than you would ever expect, even at 96 when she died. But, as we get older and she would be trying to deal with technology, she would FaceTime with us, and she was learning all these new things. And so, as happens, I do have to say, it took some patience to spend long amounts of time with her. And I think that was especially true for her kids. And so when we were there, my mom, her daughter, she was desperately trying to be patient with her mother. And it took some effort, right? As these things do. But she was patient. And so where did this pent up impatient go, it went to me, right? So she was snapping at me more than she normally does. And where did I take that out? My child. So we have this domino effect, right, of napping. And what did that look like? So for me, when I was sort of in a more snappy place, so I get more impatient and sharp in my tone. I'll say no and stop a lot more often, like without really even considering what it is that he's asking or wanting. I find that I use more controlling phrases and tone, like, if you don't, blah, 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 then blah, 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 right? So that's one of my flags that I'm feeling a bit snappy. And of course, afterwards, the guilt, right? We all feel that guilt hangover. And so when we were in Florida that trip, I had this little realization. There was this one day I was at the pool with my son. It was just the two of us. He had his little floaties on, and I was sitting on one of those, those long pool noodles, right? These like foam pool noodles. And I'm sitting on the pool noodle, and suddenly my balance shifted ever so slightly, and right, pool noodle comes exploding out of the pool. Wow. It doesn't float gently to the surface, it just
pow.
And right, so I put it back under my legs, and a few minutes later, something shifts me off balance, and there goes the pool noodle. And I have to say, the first thing that crossed my mind, maybe because I'm a psychologist, but I think more so because of the situation we were in, was that is anger.
Wow.
That pool noodle is anger, right? And we had that domino effect of pool noodles, of anger noodles, if you will, right? Okay. And so, really it's not just anger. In that moment, I thought anger, but really, anger doesn't often show up on its own. It likes to bring its friends or come about because of its friends. So there's all these other feelings, and certainly trauma, with this podcast focusing a bit on trauma, I wanted to bring that up, that certainly trauma can be a piece of that, and all these other feelings that go along with anger. So the first step, the first step that I think a lot of parents skip is not giving themselves the space, the permission, and the tools and resources to feel the feels, right? And anger is a big one because we, as a society, we don't do well with anger. There's all these messages that anger is not safe. It's not safe to express, and it's not safe to feel, right? And so we sit on that anger noodle. We sit on it and we say, nope, I'm not going to let you come to the surface. And what happens? It comes exploding out as soon as something shifts you just a little bit. There comes that anger noodle.
Yes.
And it's something that I know I've struggled with, and it's something that honestly I think is always a work in progress. It's a process, right? It's a process. And again, it's not just anger, right? It's all these, I like to call them prickly feelings, right? So when you prick your finger on something and you feel that pain, it's not pleasant and it's not something that you want, but it is really valuable. These feelings are valuable. And when we sit on them, when we stuff them under that pool surface, they're gonna come out at some point. So that is the first piece of it.
Can I stop you right there? Because I am like, that is the first piece of it. I'm like, holy cow, that's not all of it. And I know that some of the parents are listening, and sometimes you get a little bit triggered by what our guest coaches are saying, and if you are listening with a closed mind, and how dare she tell me how to do mine, listen with an open mind, because if you listen with an open mind, you will feel it through your body, like, wow, what Dr. Gila is talking about is something that I feel. So I want you to take a deep breath, and I want you to just hold it for a minute. Feel where you feel it in your body and blow that stuff off of you. Blow it off of you. Breathe in, hold it. And if you need to take another breath, just blow it off of you, because what she is talking about, we've all went through. I mean, either we got popped, on the leg, and be like, what the heck did I do? But the mother give you that look. She is going through 4 generations here now. So I mean, let's give it back to Dr. Gila, and go ahead, finish with the second part of it.
Thank you, Jules. And I'm taking some breaths along with you. It's always a good reminder. And that segues well into what my second point is, which is that, you know, this piece, feeling our feelings, giving ourselves space, permission, and the tools and resources to feel them. This, I would say, is one piece, one example of the bigger picture first step. And I'm going to say a word that I hesitate to say because I'm telling you, you're going to roll your eyes. So before you do, listeners, before you shut me off, I want you to know that I might define it differently than you're thinking. And the word is self-care. We hear self-care all the time, and I don't know about you, but I roll my eyes and say, yeah, I know. I got to do more self-care. Got it. But when in the world am I going to do that? I'm a parent. I'm a single parent. I'm a working single parent. I don't have time for that. When I do try to make time for self-care, it cuts into other self-care, right? It means I have to stay up late and there goes my sleep. It means, right, I have to miss out on other things. Because when we think of self-care, usually we think of things like bubble baths and spa days, right? We think of sunrise yoga and things like that, maybe staying up and binging your favorite show and that kind of thing. So, but what I mean by self-care is, I would say, I call deep self-care. And I want to give you a little visual that I like to use with myself and with my son and with my clients. So the visual is a sink. And I like to think of it as each of us has a sink inside of us, not a real sink, of course, a metaphorical sink. And when your sink is getting really full, if a little bit more, a trickle more of water comes in, your sink is going to overflow, right? And that overflow, that's what we call dysregulation. So when your sink is overflowing, you no longer can control where that water is going, right? When your sink is emptier, that same amount of water coming in, you're going to be able to handle, right? So we can't, and I want to say this really clearly, you're not always going to be able to keep your sink from getting full, right? So expecting perfection is unrealistic for a variety of reasons. 1, we're human. 2, we're parents. 3, we're parents in the context of really a lot of broken systems that we can't change in this moment, right? And the other piece is that being imperfect in your parenting is not only to be expected, it has benefit. It normalizes imperfection for our children, and it gives us an opportunity to model for them healthy repair. So I want to say that as a preface, because if you are having these full sink moments, these overflowing sink moments, to have that compassion, that self-compassion, and to know that you are not alone, and that perfection, getting rid of it entirely, that's not the goal. But there are some things that we can do. And the sink analogy, what I like about it is it gives us some places of things that we can intervene. So we can clear any big clogs in our pipe. We can keep the drain open and clear. We can notice when our sink is getting full and learn ways to empty it. And we can learn what kinds of situations fill our sink quickly and intensely, and how we can turn down the water pressure a bit. And I'm not going to be able to cover all of that, but I wanted to mention a few that I've noticed are helpful for me also. So first of all, the clog in the drain. The question often comes up, how do you know if you need therapy versus coaching? And I'm not going to be able to totally answer that right now, but one piece of it is, I think of, if you have, let's say you have a really significant trauma history that is creating this clog in that pipe that is keeping the rest of, it's preventing you from being able to work on the rest of that sink, right? So it can be exhausting to work on all of these higher level things when really there's this clog that needs to be addressed. And so that would be a time when therapy would be a helpful first step. But aside from that clog, there's a lot of things that we can do to keep that sink healthy and running smoothly. And all of that is what I would call self-care. And so a few examples. One, which you sort of addressed, Jules, right, is the self-talk piece, right? How we talk to ourselves. So we talk a lot, we see a lot of messaging about how communication is important in adult relationships like marriages. There's less about how important it is with our kids, which it is very important. And I think even less about how important it is with ourselves. How we talk to ourselves is powerful.
Wow.
Right?
Yes.
And that's really where it starts. How we talk to ourselves affects how we feel, how we think, how we interact with other people, like our kids. And our own communication habits become the template for our kids' inner voice. So how we talk to ourselves is a big piece of it. Another big piece is boundaries, right? So anger is often a signal that someone or something has crossed a boundary. And it's a good thing we have that feeling, because we want to know when our boundaries have been crossed so that we can do something to get our needs met, right? So asserting those boundaries can be challenging. I'm going to give you a quick little example. The other night, I had a great evening with my son, and then we came home in a good mood and get a phone call from a family member who suddenly wants to talk about all these logistics about the week that were really stressing me out. And before I know it, here I am getting impatient and short with my son, right? And so in that moment, my boundary, what I wish I had done, was said to that family member, I'd really like to talk about that. This is not a good time. I'm going to call you tomorrow so we can figure this out. The boundaries.
Wow.
Right? And one thing that I'm trying to practice for myself, and it sort of crosses over between the self-talk and the boundaries, is to notice how often you use should and need. I'm doing this because I should or because I need to. And to pause and ask yourself, do I really need to do it? Because sometimes we're doing it out of an expectation that other people have, not a need that is aligned with our own needs. And sometimes we're doing it because we actually want to, or we get to. If we can shift that perspective to want or get to, that can be a powerful shift for ourselves. And sometimes, yeah, you need to do it. But having that clarity for yourself and knowing where am I doing things that are actually not coming from a place that's aligned with my own values and my own boundaries, can be really powerful. And I love what you were saying, Jules, about pausing and taking a breath, and that's the last thing that I'm gonna mention, which is that I don't know about you, I've tried to do all these like meditation apps a million times. I can't seem to find or make the time for it, but what I can do and what I find more helpful is to tag these micro moments of breath with activities that I'm doing anyway. So, for example, when I wash my hands after going to the bathroom, imagine if every time you washed your hands, you took some intentional, slow